Is it all right?
It should be now.
Okay. So let's say we create a button object called my button. Okay. So then what's next? The next thing you can do is if you want to add a button into the container my pen, so you're going to say my pen dot add my button. So this is going to add a button in here. Okay. Now, however, this is just one object, my button. Now, if you have a multiple object, then you cannot just say my pen dot add my button 1, my button 2, my button 3, because this is going to cause some mess, because you have to specify where you actually going to position your each of the button. So then you need to call the second method called set layout. So set layout is going to actually tell what's the position of each of the button. But if you just keep adding, so if you add a 1, by default, it's gonna be added into the center of the pane, the container. But if you have the multiple one, then you have to specify which one is added to the left, right, top, bottom. So you have to specify the location. And this is how you're going to do this, by calling the set layout method. Okay. Okay, so now when I say this, then but you need to actually take a look at the example to know how you're going to actually use each of the method. So we talk about a JFrame, we talk about a content pane, which is a container, and then the next thing we're going to introduce is the class called a Jlabel. Okay, Jlabel is another object. It's a label object. So Jlabel is pretty simple. You basically just create a text string and display on the window. Okay. So when you actually create the when you want to create a label, you need to call the class Jlabel and create an instance of the Jlabel. Now there are a couple of actually attributes for the Jlabel. One is the title of the Jlabel, which basically means what kind of message you want to actually display on the label, and what's the width of the label, and what's the height of the label. Okay, so you need to instantiate the class label just like a Jlabel. Say my label. Okay. Okay, you declare the reference actually variable, and then you can actually say my label new, and you call the constructor to create the actual object of the label. Okay. Now you can call the Jlabel in various different ways by calling different constructor. If you actually call Jlabel by using the default constructor, and then you're creating a label with no message, with no actual label on it. Okay, and you can create a Jlabel with you can provide a string. Okay. Okay, these are
Professor,
yes.
is it possible to declare and implement the Jlabel in one line, like Jlabel my label equals new Jlabel?
Yes.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be two separate statements.
You can put in the one. Yeah, you can put it in one line. Just say Jlabel my label equals new Jlabel. But many times people want to do this. Now the advantage of doing this is, remember the polymorphism, right? If you sometimes you can actually, if you have a derived class, you have like a parent class, you declare, if a Jlabel is a parent class, you have derived class of Jlabel, and then you want to know which exactly the subclass you want to call, then you can call different object. Remember this, the polymorphism thing. So if you separate, so so this is the same, Jlabel, my label and my label Jlabel. So it's the same as Jlabel, my label equals new, like a Jlabel, right? So this is actually equivalent. Okay. But you don't have to actually assign an object to it, because so when you create the Jlabel, my label, it just say, okay, I create the my label as a Jlabel. Okay. It's a reference variable, but it does not point to any object. When you call the constructor going to create the actual object and then point to that one, to the actual object. So you can actually do this in one statement, but you can do this in two statements. Okay. Does it make sense?
Yes, thank you.
So these are the methods of Jlabel. So there are a couple of different constructors for Jlabel. Okay. So you can create the Jlabel by calling constructor Jlabel and provide the string. Okay. And then you can create the Jlabel and provide a string, and then you can also provide the locations. So the value of a line can be any of one of the following: swing constants left, and swing constants, I think it's a center. And this is right. So I forgot, I just copy paste 3 times. I forgot to change this. Okay. And also you can put some kind of icon in Jlabel. So we're going to talk about this later, because you can put the text on the label, but you can also put an icon on the label. Okay. So you can create a label with the icon. Okay. Now the next one we're going to use is J text field. Okay. It's just like a Jlabel, but it's not labeled because it's a text box. It will allow people to actually put the character inside this box. Okay. So these are the methods for text box. J, I think these 3 are the constructor, right? So you can actually create the J text field with a new empty text field with this, specify the number of columns. Okay. So if you call like a J text field and a my field, then you can say new J text field. That's the constructor you want to call. If you put a 30, so that means this is a text field which contains 30 characters. You can put the 30 characters in here. Okay. Okay. And also J field, you can put a string, construct a new text field, initialize with specified text. So you can actually put the initial value in there. So of course, because it's a text field, you can always override this initial text, right? So now you can create another constructor, create the text field and also the column. So for example, if you say, let's say Brady and 10. So that means you're going to fill with Brady 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then provide additional 5 space. So that's 10. And then the very the most important method in the J field is set text, because this can actually fill the message in the text field. Because when you create the text field, it's fine. Initially, it's empty. That's okay, because eventually you can set a text and you can actually put the value in there. Okay. Now, in this calculated example, what you want is when you press the button, like press the button 3. So you're going to trigger the event by calling the method in action listener. Remember the action listener, which is trigger the event. So then this event could eventually, set text in the display area. Like so when you press the button, this button, and the label on this button is 3, you hope that you're going to implement a method to set number 3 in this text field. Okay, so that's the hope. That's the key for the implementation of the method. So that's why set method is set text is very important for the J text field. Okay, so you can set whatever the text you want to set. Okay, and also get a text. So whatever displayed on the text field, you can actually check out what's the text displayed on the text field. So by calling the get text. So these are two very important method. So then there's another method called set editable, and with the Boolean actually parameter. So if the value of the Boolean variable b is false, the user cannot type a text field. In this case, the text field is used as a tool to display the result. So I actually see that if you create the text field and then set the editable by setting the editable and put the false in the parameter in the argument, then this is almost like a label, right? You treat this text field as a label, just to use it to display the result. Okay, but it's not a label. Label is actually you have to initially set it, and you're never going to be able to change it. But this, you're going to actually only display the result. You don't want other people to override the result. Okay, then use this method. Okay. Now the other one is the add action listener. So basically you're going to add a specific action listener to receive the action event from this text field. So remember, when you create a button, you can actually associate the button with add action listener. But for the text field, you can also create action. For example, when you in a website, you in a text box, you type certain text in the text box, and after you finish it, you hit the enter. Hopefully this is going to trigger an event, right? This is also going to trigger the action listener to perform some kind of operation. Okay, so that's the other way you can actually trigger some kind of event. And J button, as we mentioned, that it's an object that it's widely used object. These are 3 different constructor, and you can actually set the text. What are you going to display on the button? And you can get the text. That's important, right? Because when you press the button with the text 2, so when you press the button, you should actually display the value 2 on the actual display field. So basically you need to actually, when you click the button, you need to actually know what's the text on this button, right? and eventually you're going to convert this text into a number. So you get a 2. Okay. So set a text, get a text, so you can always change the text on the button. And also you can add.
Professor, you're cutting out like crazy again.
Okay. Check your.
I'm hearing him just fine.
Yeah. So check your own screen, because sometimes it's probably your own connection. Okay. So you can add an action listener for the button. So like a text field button, you're gonna actually many times you're gonna trigger some event, right? Trigger some event. So, and the next thing we're gonna talk about is how to actually handle the event. So when you actually click the button, you're gonna trigger the event listener, because when you basically for the button, there's a method called add action listener. So when you click the button, you're gonna trigger the event listener. Event listener is an object that's gonna receive the message when J button is clicked. Or if you actually, for the text field, when you actually type the text and you hit the enter, hit the carriage return, you're gonna also trigger the event listener and then receive the message when the carriage return is hit. Okay. Now, before you do this, you have to register your listener. For example, the button need to register the action listener. So then the action, every actually time when you click the button, the action listener gonna actually receive the message. Okay. So you have to register it. And also for the text field, you also need to register text field before, when you hit the enter, the text field are going to trigger the action listener, because this, you have to register must register the action listener before you can allow the action listener to take action when you click the button or do something else. Now, in the action listener, there is a method declared. It's called the action performed method. But once you register the action listener, so you need to implement the action performed in your object, like J button. You have to implement the action performed in J button. So then when you click the button, you're going to trigger the action listener, and you're going to trigger the action performed. And then because action performed is overwritten in your J button, so eventually the action performed in the J button going to be executed. So that's something we're going to actually talk about a little bit later. So it's a little bit tricky, but this is a very nicely organized, event. Okay. So here I'm going to talk about the calculator. Okay. So the calculate, what I do is I just create the calculator as using, remember I used the second approach. I declare a calculator 1 as the derived class of JFrame. Okay, so I can use all the methods defined in the JFrame in calculator 1. The calculator 1 is actually derived class of JFrame. So its calculator 1 is a JFrame, right? So in the JFrame, it's gonna contain one text field and 16 buttons. Okay. Now here's the constructor for the calculator 1. So first you can actually create a frame and set up a frame size, and then I create a container object, and then add a text field into the container in the container object, and add all these buttons into the container object, and then register each of the button with the action listener object. Okay. So this is something I'm going to do for the calculator 1. Okay. Okay. So So I'm going to talk about the next two a little bit later, but I first I want to just show you some of the example. Okay. Now the first example I want to show you is this. Okay. Is called the class called GUI. This is a very simple class. There's a main method. Okay. So what I do is I create the main method and declare a friend as a JFrame. So I'm gonna call the constructor with the titles, my first GUI. And then I can create a container called my pane. So which is actually by calling the method in a JFrame, by calling the friend dot get content pane. This one gonna get the pane for this particular friend object. Okay. Okay. Then I'm gonna call the friend dot set default close operation. Now the default operation is, I actually just exit on close. If I click close, the whole window gonna exit. Okay. So now there are some other extra values JFrame. You can check the JFrame class in the search the Java JFrame class on GUI. So you will see different values. Let's check it out. Java JFrame. See. Let me see what is. Let's see default. Okay, so we're going to talk about this later. So, but let's say the value, the operation we can take is exit on close. Okay, exit on close, and then we're going to set the frame size. It's a 300 by 300. That's basically means the pixel. Okay, 300 pixels by 300 pixels. Okay. Now, then I create another object called JFrame, JButton. So I call it button 1. And then on top of button, I'm going to put the my button. So then I add the button into the pane, the container, right? Into my pane, which is the container. And set the visible to true. You have to set the visible to true. Otherwise, you won't be able to see the frame. Okay, let's actually just see. When I add the GUI, then I execute the Java GUI. It is kind of slow. I don't know why it's so slow. Let's actually quit and let me quit. Okay, let me just add again. Java C GUI.java. I'm using the using the free actually account. So that's why I'm not allocated enough CPU power. So it's relatively slow. Java GUI. That's way too slow. Okay, let's quit. That's way too slow. What I gotta do? So let me actually let me use my local local compiler. So instead of use the let me actually okay. Let me so okay. Let's see. 1500 problem example. New GUI. Okay. Let me see what I have. Okay, I'm actually using my own local Java C. So I copy paste the code in there. So I check the dir so I can see my, oh, so it's okay. So there's a GUI.java over here. Let me see Java C GUI.java. Okay, so quick. My machine's very quick. Okay, so then I actually basically create a GUI window. So this is actually the friend. You see that one, right? Let me put the prompt over here, the screen over here. My source code. I put my source code over here. Okay, here's my source code. Okay, you can see that all these different parts. Okay, so so this is the frame. The whole thing is the frame, and the greenish part, you know, the one actually which is actually when I actually move the mouse out and in, you can see it's like you can see some kind of move. That's the container, the pane, the main pane. Okay, so I add button 1 in here. So that's my button. Okay, so this is my button. Okay, so I create the button 1. It's you know the text on the button 1 is my button, and so the title is my first GUI, right? So so you can do this. Now you can close it. By default, you're gonna close it. Now, if I change anything, for example, if I change the size, say 300 by 100, okay, and then I change my button to start. Change my button, and my title first GUI, like first my first GUI. So I change all this and I save it, okay, and then I compile it again. You can see that so the width is still 300, but the height is reduced to 100. So typically you can see that it's kind of like a 1/3, you know, and my button, the button 1 is still in the center, but the text on the button 1 becomes start, and the title becomes my first GUI. Okay. Now I apologize, babe. Maybe the screen is probably too small for you. Can you see it clearly?
Yeah, I can see it just fine.
Okay. So you can actually manipulate this. But if I click the button, if I point my mouse to the start button, if I click it, it doesn't do anything, right? Which is expected because I did not register my button to an action listener. And I also did not implement the action performed method. I did not perform the method in action listener. So when I click it, there's no action listener to listen to this button. So this button, the click action gonna do nothing. So this is actually the case. But I can implement the GUI different ways. Okay, so basically I can implement the GUI like this. Okay, so let's say okay, I can implement it as another one. Okay, I call it GUI1. Okay, and I save as GUI1.java. So this is the first approach, because in GUI1, I just create a JFrame and whatever. But now I save as GUI1, so my class gonna change to GUI1. But I implement the GUI1 as extend the JFrame. This time the GUI1 itself is a JFrame, right? So then I can do whatever I want to do. Okay, so I can create a constructor for the GUI1. Okay, so I can say public GUI1. Let's say I create the constructor. So what I'm gonna do is in the constructor, I'm gonna create a button, J button. Okay, create the J button, and also I'm gonna create a container. Okay, I'm gonna create I can put everything in the constructor, so I can create this. Okay, so in the main method, all I want to do is I can create a GUI1 instead of say my GUI, right? And then you GUI1, and so I call this default constructor over here. Just call this default constructor. So let's see. I'm gonna also call the frame. Oh no, should not do this. My pane create add. Okay, I just directly call it content pane because GUI1 is a JFrame, so I don't have to actually create a JFrame object and call the friend dot get contents. The get contents can be directly called, and so I can get this one, and I can set as visible because I can set this set to visible is a method defined in JFrame, but it's actually can be called in GUI1, right? So let's see whether it's working. Okay. Okay. Hopefully it's gonna work. So let's see. I'm gonna save. So I apologize. It's actually I'm running out of time. But if you have anything else, you can leave. Okay. Okay. So let's say Java C GUI1.java. Okay. So then I can call GUI1. Actually, you know what? Initially, it's nothing because I haven't set my. Okay, I haven't set my. Okay, I need to set the size, right? 300 to 300. So because everything, all the functions set the size, get content pane, it's actually also, you know, the GUI1 gonna inherit from the JFrame, so you can directly call it. Okay, so this is gonna actually, you know, if I, let's see, I close it. Okay, let's compile it. Okay, so the GUI is actually Windows always display on another window, so that's why. Yeah, this is the one you're gonna see. So you basically you can define as your own class GUI1 and extend the JFrame. It can actually perform the same operation, but again, the start does not react because there's no action over here. So next time we're going to talk about how to trigger the operation when you click the button or when you hit the enter. So that's something we're going to talk about next. Okay, sorry, I apologize for the delay. You know, it's too late. You know, it's already at 12:18. But I think that's all I want to talk about for today. First, I will post this code on the Blackboard. And also I'm going to post another code, the calculator 1, on the Blackboard. So please actually take a look at the code. And when we actually come back on Monday, I'm going to talk about the calculate example and to see how we trigger these event when you click the button and how this event are going to eventually call the method and how this method is implemented. That's something we're going to talk about. So I think that's pretty much all for today.
See ya.
Thank you, Professor.
Okay.
Have a good weekend.
Okay. So I'll post, keep your eye on the Blackboard. So I'm going to post something on the Blackboard. So yeah. Okay. I'll talk to you on Monday.